After my last release and even further reflection on the extremely disturbing and distressing, unwanted, undeserved, absolutely hellish, perpetual sheer nightmare of nightmares that my life continues to be, I suddenly started seeing extremely disturbing things that were previously concealed now being revealed in my energy that seem to relate to extremely serious, massive defamation that worthless scum, fraud losers are inflicting on me. I will address these along with my perspective on some extremely disturbing things I noticed in others' content that seems it might be relevant to exposing the truth of the reality of my life further. First of all, since I recently noticed Kimmy post a tweet with glasses on, and I got this weird feeling as if that's being purported as something that I want, need, or benefit from, or am appeased by, or forced to shut up or change my position at all somehow as a result of Kimmy and or anyone else doing. I wanted to be extremely clear that this is completely false. Whether glasses in general or perhaps a specific kind of glasses, whether in a certain situation or at a certain time or ever at all, it doesn't matter. It's completely false. It's not like I despise the look of glasses. I don't. But it's also not something that gives anyone any leverage over me or something I've specifically been after for them to wear. That aside, the sparkle filter covering the face thing I've seen many times in the past that Kimmy and others have utilized to facilitate their extreme abuse towards me over time. It seems it relates to them utilizing a tarot reader named Sarah to exert extremely abusive influence on my life through energetic, deeply spiritual attacks, taking advantage of her spiritual rank, which must be significant since she's a tarot reader, and I assume you can't be one if you're really low ranked spiritually. I don't know exactly her personal involvement in attacking me of her own personal interests. I don't know the woman personally at all. Never met her, and I've never spoken to her privately or anything. But I've come to have her existence brought to my attention extensively over the last several months, the more I've defended myself spiritually. So it's reached the point I feel it's necessary to mention this. I imagine Kimmy and others abusing me have been heavily utilizing this Sarah woman in their conspiracies to murder me. I don't consider Sarah herself completely faultless, since although I have no want or need to advertise her business, I feel compelled to mention she's effectively running a business operating an extremely shady energy that opens itself to her being a tool for things like this. But nonetheless, I'm going to try to address the kind of lies I think this reveals to me. In case the usage of some kind of sparkle or shiny filter on people's faces is being falsely purported as if to appease me somehow, as if it's something I find arousing or benefit at all from somehow, I want to make it extremely clear that such is a massive lie. If it's based on some false narrative that I particularly care for seeing someone's face covered in latex, or that me saying I have a latex fetish somehow means something else, that's all wrong. My latex fetish is not symbolism for anything else, and actually, of all the body parts I'd want to see someone I consider attractive to be covered in latex clothing of some kind, I strongly prefer any latex they wear to only be from the neck and down. Like their face remaining completely uncovered. Anyone at all communicating otherwise is fully consciously and intentionally lying at my expense, completely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. Another massive lie that I've seen what I consider extremely disturbing reason to believe has been happening behind my back, also at my expense and entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests for likely several years now, is that for some reason people seem to believe I'm somehow romantically and or sexually involved with my biological brother. Like, not even just some lie that I've ever done sexual things with him in the past at some point long ago or something like that, but literally something that they're acting as if it's truth. The massive lies that I'm actively romantically and or sexually involved with him to the extent of basically dating him or wanting or trying to get to date him and possibly even marry him or something, whether privately and or publicly. Like, to the point as if he's treating me like I'm the love of his life or something, and I feel the same towards him. Gross. Ew. Completely, absolutely, unconditionally false. There is absolutely no real evidence at all that can truly substantiate any of such claims. My extremely toxic blood relatives must be massively hating on me behind the scenes. Massively. They must be so angry that I'm exposing them for the extremely horrible people they are. Such massive psychopaths, narcissists, frauds, and generally unbelievably scummy losers. So I'm making it clear that not only have I never done anything sexual with my biological brother, but I also most certainly am not dating him or trying to date him. My biological mother has always been extremely abusively, exceedingly critical of everything I do, and only ever wanted to fight with me instead of ever really support or encourage me. She always extremely creepily wanted to violate my privacy and sense of safety and exert control over my life that blatantly extends well past any reasonable boundaries of any even remotely healthy parent and child relationship. And she's clearly, unacceptably, extremely severely lied about the reality of who she is to her entire family and probably anyone else who will listen, as she tries to avoid any real accountability for her actions and how harmful they've been and to this day continue to be to my existence. Just one example is how she insulted me and tried to traumatize and emotionally dysregulate me extremely severely in the past by extremely strangely literally asking me, "Are you gay with your brother?" As if that was an even remotely appropriate or reasonable thing for anyone to believe even might possibly be true, when in reality it most certainly never was and still isn't and never will be. I've mentioned this on this podcast before, but I guess I'll elaborate further since I'm getting an extremely disturbing feeling that these massive psychopaths I once called family are seriously trying to continue using such a blatantly extremely false narrative, and the massive frauds that are public figures I've called out and their friends are all trying to massively cover up their massive crimes, conspiring to murder me by going along with those blatantly extremely false narratives about me, even with absolutely no real evidence. Either he's done or said something to her many years ago that's based on massive lies that she actually had some reason to base any belief in that lie about, as she fully consciously and intentionally hid those reasons from me to be able to attempt to report that false narrative behind my back all these years with blatant malice towards me in doing so, or she herself was doing and saying such things, literally just fabricating things out of thin air to try to make it seem like that's the case, or both. I'd definitely argue she intentionally was trying to get me to be involved that way with him because she's probably slept with at least one of her biological brothers, and that was a way she was trying to destiny swap with me. Or she saw gay tendencies in my biological father and assumed I'd inherit it or something, or both. My biological brother is going along with it, either because he's sucking up to my biological father to get some of the fraudulently obtained life insurance money of my biological father's massive crimes against me as they conspire to murder me, or because he's actually attracted to me sexually for whatever reason, or both. I don't know or really care. What I do know for sure is that even just the extent and likeliness I feel of the possibility that I'd be falling into some kind of trap, ultimately somehow validating any extremely false narratives about me, ever having any kind of romantic and or sexual feelings towards and or involvement with my biological brother, by ever allowing him or either of my biological parents or any of my other biological relatives back into my life, it's plenty enough reason for me to be extremely viciously, absolutely unconditionally unwilling to ever even consider allowing any of them back in my life. And there are plenty other extremely good reasons beyond that as well, which only even more extremely thoroughly objectively validate my attitude towards all those people. This extremely pathetic loser is likely actively himself participating in massive slander and libel, defaming me with claims I'm romantically and or sexually involved with him somehow, as he tries to justify it by acting like this extremely disgusting behavior he's inflicting on me is something I brought on myself somehow. In reality, he was a weirdo and kinda creepy towards me for a long time since childhood, doing strange things like humping the walls of my room to annoy me and try to get my attention, and even trying to mount my back and hump my back. I literally had to violently push him off me more than once in the past to keep this pervert from doing things that were borderline intentionally, blatantly sexual things sometimes. I tried to chalk it up to some kind of innocent brotherly thing, but at this point I'm very inclined to believe this massive creep's head was somewhere else while he was doing such things that in reality he should have always known. I've always found extremely disgusting if I knew the truth. If anything, he's the one that's tried to inflict unconsensually sexual things on me, and he should be the one with people thinking he's attracted to men, not me. He's literally told me he's sucked a dick before. And he even tried to pressure me to at least try it, to suck dick, to see if I'd like it. As if I need to try everything at least once to know I won't enjoy it. I told him extremely clearly that I most certainly do not want or need to have any willingness to ever try sucking a dick or engaging in any kind of sexual acts with men, to know I'm not attracted to men at all. And to this day, I do not want or need or have any willingness whatsoever to suck anyone's dick, and I never have. Unless Kimmy somehow was secretly born male and has been hiding all along that she in reality has a dick, then I definitely, absolutely, unconditionally never will even consider sucking anyone's dick. I'm pretty sure Kimmy doesn't have a dick, and that's perfectly fine with me. I'll love her body all the same as it is. While I wouldn't feel any differently about her if she was somehow a trans woman, I certainly aren't hoping she's transgendered at all, nor do I or have I ever specifically sought out transgendered people for any kind of romantic and or sexual involvement with me. Anyone at all communicating otherwise is fully, consciously, and intentionally lying at my expense, completely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. All my blood relatives just try to avoid accountability for all their wrongdoings and blame everything on me with massive, extremely irrational, unhealthy projection without any even remotely sane boundaries. They've all been so horrible to me that I don't even want to even try to trust any of them at all ever again. I've really just reached the point where I'm done trying to fix things. I'm done trying to see the good in people that clearly isn't there in such horrible people just because they're biologically related to me. I'm so different from all of them, we might as well be strangers, especially after how much they've all hurt me. I really just want them all completely out of my life forever. I don't care what excuses they have or what they think they can offer me or how much of a hard time they might try to give me with their lies. I know I'm better off without them in my life, and I'm putting my sanity and dignity and inner peace above their extremely selfish, toxic desires. I'm not filing a lawsuit against my biological father for the life insurance fraud he did, or the defamation and criminal impersonation and conspiracy to murder that him and my biological brother and biological mother and others of my biological relatives are involved in. Why, you might ask? It's not because I trust them at all or I'm trying to fix the connection at all. I really don't, and I'm really not. It's because if I try to take civil legal action, they can try to spin false narratives about me as if I was cooperating with them up to this point and plotting to betray them like that all along and backstab them, and I'd be stuck with them violating my energy forever. Or just generally take that kind of behavior as validation for their false narratives that I'm lazy and fake and entitled and whatever other massive lies they've always treated me as if were true, despite my constantly demonstrating to them all in extremely clear ways were extremely false. My soul would have been robbed from me, and I effectively would have sold it for whatever I get from whatever civil legal action I'd have taken. And since I'm obviously not equipped to fight that kind of legal battle myself, I'd have to get a lawyer, and said lawyer would probably take a sizable portion of what I would have been rewarded for themselves, so whatever amount that already wouldn't have been worth it, no matter what it is, would even be diminished considerably as well. I'm way too smart to do such a stupid and weak thing. It was never even slightly tempting. I'm pursuing getting all these criminals thrown in prison for a long time, or losing their lives entirely if that's what it takes to retain my soul. I genuinely couldn't care less about any of their money or other resources, and definitely want to completely eliminate their completely worthless, meaningless, fake personalities and horrible energy from my life permanently. I actually don't owe any of them anything, and I actually don't want, need, or have any willingness to tolerate having any of them in my life at all ever again. I genuinely, extremely, deeply, absolutely, unwaveringly despise them all. As far as Kimmy and her associates, like I've said, if Kimmy will be with me properly and genuinely commit and invest herself fully, publicly and privately, in an extremely serious, frequently physically, sexually intimate, in-person life partnership with me, like I've been saying I've always been after, then I'm willing to have mercy on her and consider having mercy on the other people she can convince me I should have mercy on, so me and her can have a healthy and happy connection forever, where I'm extremely thoroughly satisfied every day with the extensive in-person physical sexual intimacy we have together privately, purely for our own mutual pleasure, with nobody and nothing else watching. If Kimmy is for whatever reason unwilling or unable to comply and cooperate with my desires and demands of her in a timely manner, especially in this regard, then I'm also pursuing lengthy prison sentences, if not elimination from real life, for all of these public figures as well, absolutely unconditionally. So she's going to have to make an extremely decisive decision and make it fast, because I'm not trying to wait around and I'm not slowing down or stopping my efforts. My situation still has not improved at all. I'm still homeless and eating out of trash cans while having to avoid hitmen on the regular and getting absolutely zero compensation for everything I've done and overcome. I'm obviously in such an extremely intense situation where I'd have to rather quickly either take everything down from my podcast's YouTube channel or release something on it, making a public official statement that something's changed if it did. But I really won't ever accept any bribes or coercion trying to rob me of my soul or force me to sell it, even if I really can't have the connection I want with Kimmy. And I'm really only going to attack everyone more and more the longer I'm stuck getting denied of that connection with her I've always been after. I'm not looking for a job or willing or needing to accept one being forced on me. Nobody knows my passwords. I use a heavily security-focused setup on Linux and only use open source software. I have no want or need to let anyone use my computer or phone ever. There's absolutely no amount of influence anyone can exert on me that would offer me incentive I'd take to change my position at all on this conflict. I either get Kimmy in a timely manner, or things get worse for everyone absolutely unconditionally as I bring chaos and doom to the reeking dumpster fire hellhole nightmare of nightmares that is Earth. Do not take my kindness for weakness or confusion or indecisiveness. I really mean it. All of it. I might not know all the details of everyone's life or everything in the universe there is to know, but I know enough to know what my position on humanity is and why extremely clearly. There are only two ways this is going to end, and it's really not going to be pretty if I don't get what I want. Further, I see even reason to believe people are still extremely badly lying that my life is vastly different from what I've been saying it is, to the point of even claiming I have a family, like a wife, possibly one or more children, and even a house. What the hell? None of that is true. I don't have any of that, and there's absolutely no real evidence whatsoever otherwise. And I even see reason to believe that whoever is involved in defamation of me, that's claiming I'm at all on good terms with any of my biological relatives and have this strange romantic and or sexual involvement with my biological brother, are lying so badly as if I invite him over to eat dinner with them or something. So wrong. I also see evidence to suggest that Kimmy and Celine, along with Jamie and her boyfriend, who I believe is called Anthony, have been working in a group to try to abusively force me to deal with some garbage relationship with Elaine through spell casting, presumably thinking I'd submit to such a thing out of desperation or simply being a fraud. Again, it might sound delusional to people, but I'm sure they understand what I'm talking about. No thank you. I actually don't involve myself with that kind of stuff. I don't want or need to. I certainly wouldn't want to do it to get to be with Elaine, even if I did mess with it. I don't even find her particularly physically attractive. I see women literally on the daily, randomly in fast food places or libraries or outside on the street who I find considerably more physically attractive than Elaine, and her personality I find to be extremely disgusting, and I was never going to date someone just for money or fame or general influence. I'd literally rather die alone than ever even seriously consider at all consenting or being willing to tolerate any romantic and or sexual relationship with Elaine. I'm not joking or exaggerating at all. You'd literally have to put a gun to my head and tell me I have to be sexually intimate with Elaine or a very much masculine presenting male, or I'll get killed on the spot, for me to basically be forced to pick Elaine, because I really, really don't want to ever have sex with or do anything sexual with men. But unless it's some kind of extremely ridiculous situation like that, I'd never do it. Never. It's not even remotely tempting. It never was and never will be. Anyone at all communicating otherwise is fully consciously and intentionally lying at my expense, completely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. This, however, suggests to me that Kimmy's romantic relationship with Celine and Jamie's romantic relationship with Anthony are both likely based on spell casting that they're doing at my expense against my consent, wishes, and best interests. I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, they've all clearly been massively benefiting in multiple ways entirely at my expense against my consent, wishes, and best interests for years. Whatever negative consequences for their relationships occur as a result of my absolutely unconditional, unwavering, extremely vicious refusal to ever at all submit to their abuse of me, trying to force me to be at all romantically and or sexually involved with Elaine or anyone else that isn't Kimmy, I genuinely couldn't care less, and they fully deserve it. All of it. I suppose I should also just take this opportunity to address the likely still present false narratives that I've ever been pursuing a romantic and or sexual relationship with the Twitch streamer Hyun, who is a Korean female that's another one of Kimmy's associates. This is completely false. The false narratives surrounding this were so bad in the past that Hyun randomly wore a bathing suit in a latex-like material and posted pictures of it on Instagram after I tried to shut her down and call her out for being extremely shady by acting like we're in love and randomly acting like I've ever wanted to see her in like leather or a similar material. She literally responded to me trying to shut down her extremely deviously shady, abusive, narcissistic behavior towards me by being even much more so such. Disgusting. Even if her body is, in all honesty, certainly above average and easily vastly more attractive to me than, say, Jamie's or Elaine's, that doesn't make up for the personality I've seen her to have in reality. And also, Kimmy's considerably more physically attractive to me than Hyun anyways, even if we're looking at just physical appearance. I also get the sense that there's also considerably serious false narratives that I'm pursuing or have ever pursued a romantic and or sexual relationship with the Twitch streamer Jessica, another Korean female among Kimmy's associates. This is also completely false. Jessica is also considerably above average in terms of physical sexual appeal in my eyes. However, she too is unable to even match, much less exceed, Kimmy's physical sex appeal. I see nothing particularly outstanding about Jessica's personality, nor do I particularly care for trying to get to know her. I'm not trying to give petty hate to either Hyun or Jessica. I'm just making sure I've adequately defended myself against false narratives in relation to the kind of connection or lack thereof that I actually have with them. Although I don't really have any evidence to try to prove it somehow, I will say I energetically have a feeling Edison is somehow heavily involved in purporting extremely false narratives about me to and or with Jessica. I imagine this is likely because since Kimmy and Celine clearly have some weird thing going on where they're trying to get closer together by violating my energy extremely badly. And Hyun is probably involved with someone else heavily and also trying to build that connection off somehow violating my energy to at least some notable extent. And Jessica is from Canada and perhaps doesn't have something nearly as serious as those people have with whoever they're involving themselves with. Jessica seemed like what people thought was reasonably plausible to try to use like someone that I seemed obsessed with. Especially since, like I've said before and should be rather obvious with how I speak about Kimmy's body, I have an extremely strong inclination towards the physical appearance of Korean women. There also seems to be an especially toxic and abusive continued perpetuation of false narratives that I'm especially attracted to people showing their butts in jeans that seem to be increasingly aggressively haunting my energy. Such false narratives seem to have existed ever since I was in high school, if not earlier, as I've previously mentioned, what I consider adequate reason to suspect. If it's not some massive loser from my high school purporting it, then I really don't know who it is. I've literally never actually acted towards anyone in a way that should even really suggest to them that I prefer seeing a woman in jeans over latex clothing or even regular leggings. Because I genuinely have no particular liking for jeans, entirely regardless of what color or size or other attributes they possess, or who's wearing them, or when, or where, or why. Again, through what I can only describe as spirituality, I have this feeling that people think Elaine is my boss somehow. Probably because she's a massive fraud that's lying extremely badly behind the scenes as if she's employing me or ever has employed me, presumably also in part due to the massive frauds she employs as part of her friends that are beneath her and lie to her that they have some kind of leverage or control or power over me or something I want, that they can forcefully enslave me through somehow and effectively make me a tool for Elaine and eventually make me desperately in need of her validation or approval or help somehow. Laughable. She's probably a boss-type figure to Kimmy, Celine, Jamie, and Anthony, among others, but certainly not my boss at all. She never was, and she never will be. Same goes for her management or any of her friends' managements. Again, I don't have management. I don't have a boss. I'm not employed, but it's probably at this point mostly because of how extremely viciously Elaine's violating my energy, who does have a boss and management, that's violating my energy and making me feel compelled to reiterate that I don't have a boss or management. So I'm going to have to deal with that now. Time to further demonstrate that I'm what in spiritual terms it seems is called an alchemist. Basically, an extremely high-level energy worker that can transmute energy and can even take very low vibration energy and still operate from a very high vibration energy and be healing and stuff. I don't really dive into the spiritual terminology stuff because I worry it can come off schizo or inclines itself to developing mental illness. But from what I've gathered, it sounds to me like an alchemist is the most powerful energy worker compared to something like a shaman or a witch or whatever else. I don't use spells or herbs or crystals. It's just raw energy manipulation. Anyways, it means extremely aggressively gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss type growth energy is violating my energy extremely badly these days, so I'm going to tear this idiot to shreds now because she's so ridiculously stupid and disrespectful when it comes to how she deals with me that she clearly needs to see me attack her so directly she finally gets the massive humbling it seems she's grossly incapable of realizing it seems was long overdue. She wants me to not take it personal that she's extremely viciously, fully, consciously, and intentionally participating in conspiracies to murder me through her extremely predatory business practices. Alright, well then she can not take it personal that I'm going to humiliate her extremely brutally in public officially on this podcast right now. She streamed just a few hours after my last release on this podcast, so let's get into my perspective on it.
Yippee!
What the hell is this? This woman is blatantly flaunting that she's managed to lie and abuse her influence so extremely badly against me that she's forced me to have to mention her extremely pathetic, miserable existence on my podcast multiple times now, despite the fact that I really would have rather not. I don't really know or care what else might be happening in her life right now, but I can't imagine my existence and what I'm doing on this podcast isn't something that she's very much aware of and thinking about in relation to her own life. So she seems way too happy about having forced me to give her any attention, at least as far as anyone actually at all informed of this conflict and being reasonable should be able to clearly see is the case. I'm sure this seemed innocent to the general public, but I feel certain that secretly inside Imean knew that because I exposed what I did in my last release, I basically was going to be forced to meticulously address and tear apart her next Twitch stream after that release in order to make sure I've actually at all reasonably ensured I've broken what are spiritually called curses and spells on my existence that Imean has inflicted on me with her criminal activities, impersonating me and conspiring to murder me and gossiping about me, that she spread and facilitated in purporting extremely false narratives about me, or even everything I've done up to this point on this podcast defending my personality and behavior can be attacked with defamation so brutal it tries to invalidate everything still and make me look like the fraud because of how invested on trying to cover up their crimes these massive criminals obviously are. Needless to say, it should be rather obvious that I'm very much extremely unhappy that I yet again have to put immense work meticulously exposing even more massive lies instead of actually getting the communication with Kimmy and the loving, genuine relationship with Kimmy that I clearly have always wanted and been working towards from the beginning.
Do you guys see me? Wait, you should be able to see me already.
I found this comment extremely strange and feel compelled to make sure my perspective on something is clear. I'm not sure if it's in reference to some kind of access to actual private video or simply energetically in general, but I have no hidden or restricted access to seeing Imean at all. I don't do spying on people's energy, and I certainly haven't ever had secret access to anyone's camera on any device. I don't and haven't ever been really following Imean's content at all in my entire life, and the entirety of the Twitch stream she did that I'm addressing clips from in this release is literally by far the most of Imean's content I've ever consumed in my life, and I didn't enjoy it at all.
If you see me, say orange.
The color orange really has been extremely strangely coming up more and more in things that I feel my energy being violated by, that I feel compelled to address things in relation to, through what is largely just an intuitive feeling. At this point, I believe this has something to do with the international geopolitical landscape in relation to entities involved in existentially assaulting me and robbing me of my energy. The closest connection I can draw is to Donald Trump with his notorious orange skin that I believe is a result of his diet. Whether or not this guess is at all correct, I feel it's likely worthwhile mentioning regardless that I have absolutely no political affiliations with any president or rulers of any country and have no debt towards any of them, nor do any of them have any real leverage over me whatsoever. This includes, but certainly isn't limited to, Donald Trump. Since I recall hearing mention that Lily has heavy political affiliation with Trump behind the scenes, and I've already exposed how Lily has been extremely viciously violating my energy and facilitating extreme narcissistic abuse towards me from an extremely unhinged, completely irredeemable, massive narcissist, psychopath, worthless, subhuman scum loser I knew back in high school, that people have been lying extremely badly I've ever dated or will ever date, who is literally conspiring to murder me and currently actively still attempting to sacrifice my life through Arya entirely at my expense against my consent, wishes, and best interests. I'm guessing that whatever politics Lily has been involved in have been taken advantage of to amplify Trump and people who support him, which has been done entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. To be clear, I'm not especially against Trump either. I don't have any particular good or bad feelings towards any candidate for presidency, whether current or past or potentially future. I currently don't have any want or need whatsoever to at all push any of the agendas or engage in any in-depth discussion entertaining any of the political views or policies of any political candidates or officials, nor their personal lives. Personally, I don't care for any of them. I've gotten this powerful without even getting myself directly involved in the affairs of any other world leader besides myself. Effectively, Kimmy is a far more powerful and influential world leader in my eyes than Trump or any other presidential candidate of any time because of my feelings for her and all the things about the world I've tried to teach her and how I've always overall tried my very best to have a really positive impact on her life with my energy in general. I'd say the hierarchy of power in my eyes goes me at the top, Kimmy underneath me, and then everyone else is vastly underneath both of us. Because Kimmy likely has been getting manipulated quite extremely by Celine, as I've noticed, Celine's energy continues to violate mine rather significantly. I believe Kimmy is currently relinquishing a considerable extent of her own power to Celine extremely stupidly and unknowingly or carelessly, which is a rather extremely serious issue I'd extremely strongly suggest she resolves promptly before it literally extremely brutally destroys her life, Celine's life, and many of their associates' lives. Again, I'm not trying to start a vendetta against Celine, But as far as I'll ever be concerned, Celine is actually an extremely selfish, massive fraud that's only really using Kimmy to gain personal power through exploiting my feelings for Kimmy and trying to deprive both me and Kimmy of personal utmost happiness with each other, because Celine is extremely selfish and knows she's much more powerful, trying to get in my way and try to control me through denying me of Kimmy and acting like she's doing me a favor somehow in doing so, rather than accepting the reality that she's just not even close to Kimmy in my eyes, and never was and never will be, and that makes her far less powerful than Kimmy, and that's just the reality of life that she's going to have to deal with, regardless of how it makes her or anyone else feel. Kimmy should not have any particular political allegiance to anyone except me. If anyone is attempting to control her or exert personal power through her with politics, their efforts should be failing. If any other world leader is attempting to act like I owe them anything, or they have any real leverage over me, or I have any want or need or benefit from allowing them to force me to serve their personal agendas at all at the expense of the kind of connection with Kimmy I've been saying extremely clearly I've always been after, they are a massive fraud, and they are purporting extremely false narratives about me, fully consciously and intentionally, entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. I'm not trying to attack anyone in particular in saying that. I'm simply making a broad statement that applies equally as much to any such entity attempting any kind of defamation of me in such regards.
Okay, so as I said, I am gonna do a closet clean out stream. However, I'm also really hungry. So as people get in the stream, sorry, I was gonna burp. As people get in the stream, I figured it doesn't hurt for me to just eat real quick while I do the thing. By the way, I know a lot of people who are here early tend to be subs. Do you guys notice anything different in the stream? Huh? Do any of the subs notice anything different in the stream? Hold on. Lol. Yeah, we have a bunch of new emotes.
Alright, so I'm going to take the liberty of mentioning that I do not want or need or benefit from or become appeased by or forced to shut up or change my position at all because of any of this. I never cared for Imaine to do a closet clean out stream. I never cared for Imaine showing herself eating in any context for any reason. I never cared for Imaine getting new emotes for her Twitch channel. Yeah, it's really at the point where I'm basically feeling compelled to extremely meticulously address, extremely thoroughly refuting any relevancy to significance of anything I feel might at all be relevant to some kind of false narratives robbing me of my energy by Imaine's efforts, because any and all such instances are and always have been entirely at my expense and against my consent, wishes, and best interests, entirely regardless of the reasoning or who facilitated or participated in them or why. I'm not trying to pettily hate on her in saying this. I'm making sure that my position on them is established clearly, publicly, officially. I don't owe Imaine anything, and I never have. I'm not going to shut up about the massive abuse she's inflicting upon me right now, and likely has been for many years, that I haven't been in a position to adequately defend myself against it while it was purely detrimental to my existence for multiple extremely serious reasons. This is far from the first time I've seen things that gave me a feeling Imaine has been abusing extremely false narratives about me behind the scenes to torment me and facilitate her selfish gain entirely at my expense and against my consent, wishes, and best interests. I also feel like since the expression coming out of the closet refers to someone openly being homosexual, I should address my perspective regarding Imaine being lesbian or bisexual or somehow inclined or willing to engage in serious romantic and or sexual relations with females, whether cis or trans or both. Quite simply, I do not care, never have cared, and never will care. I see evidence to suggest she's seriously attracted to Lily and has engaged in considerable sexual intimacy with Lily. I genuinely don't care, and I never did. I don't know how serious it is, or if it's just to try to trigger some reaction they're hallucinating I'll have of jealousy or something, or whatever other reasons might be present for the dynamic between them that I'm noticing. But I want it to be very clear that I wouldn't care at all even if Imaine and Lily started officially dating. I'm not particularly trying to encourage it or discourage it. It really doesn't change anything for me either way. I've really only ever wanted Kimmy all along. What anyone else's sexual orientation is, or who they date or have sexual intimacy with, really doesn't matter at all to me, as long as they're not trying to have it with me or Kimmy. I just want to have sexual intimacy exclusively with Kimmy, and everyone else in the world can go have sex with everyone else that isn't either of us, for all I care, and I literally couldn't care less. Like I said, I have no problem with homosexuals in general. I'm not against Kimmy and Celine dating simply because it's a lesbian relationship between two women that I presume are both cis females. I'm against Kimmy and Celine dating because I'm being completely authentic in my feelings for Kimmy, and therefore it should be extremely abundantly obvious to anyone being even remotely reasonable, mature, intelligent, or even simply at all sane that they clearly would have been pursuing that connection all along, fully consciously and intentionally entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests, while hurting me extremely badly and having an extremely detrimental effect on my existence that they're trying to extremely viciously force me to tolerate an intolerably miserable life as a result of, where they feel this ridiculously delusional and psychotic, exceedingly pretentious sense of superiority over me to an extremely inappropriate extent in multiple regards. This also isn't specific to just Kimmy dating or being friends with benefits with Celine. It would be more or less equally as applicable with literally anyone else Kimmy would ever possibly date or be at all romantically and or sexually involved with other than myself, after how invested in my feelings and life choices Kimmy's made herself to be with the decisions she chose to make in her life in the past.
Should we keep the fun little copyright-free music? Or do we fuck it, send it, and play DMCA music?
Again, just going to mention that I don't and have never cared what music Imaine plays on stream, whether it's copyright free or not. In the past, long ago, I paid attention to what music Kimmy played on her Twitch streams because I realized it expressed feelings or intentions behind narratives that related to me that she was purporting behind the scenes. But even then, it was never something I specifically asked for or benefited from. She was ultimately the one benefiting from the narratives around it, and all it's done is inflict pain and suffering on me, having to fight to defend my existence against the chaos it caused in my energy and life as a whole. I've tolerated it because my feelings for Kimmy have always been completely sincere, but I never really enjoyed it. I always saw it as the destination I had a vision of, with the kind of connection I was hoping to achieve with Kimmy in the end, was what I was working towards and saw as the goal, and what would bring me pleasure and a sense of fulfillment and happiness, and I just accepted that the journey to get there might be years of immense suffering beforehand to overcome anything that might be getting in the way of that. Since I'm not doing any shady business stuff trying to exert influence on Imane's life deviously, and I'm being completely genuine about never having had any romantic and or sexual motives or efforts towards Imane or anyone else that might attempt to stand in the way of the connection with Kimmy I've been after. Any music Imane plays on stream is entirely irrelevant to me, just as such is the case with the music anyone else plays on their streams or in any content they release on the internet somehow at this point.
I did see the 100K that Maya got, and like, low-key, it almost made me emotional, because like there's no one more deserving, genuinely.
That smug expression after saying that, I haven't forgotten how I ended up feeling compelled to start this podcast after reaching the point where I felt my energy being violated so badly that it was like Kimmy thought she could treat me like I'm a pet, and as if she can try to devour my energy and existence by trying to absorb the essence of all my efforts into some strange thing where she's acting like I owe it to her, or was trying to work towards making it seem like I've done all I've done to exert influence over the attention or love or existence of Kimmy's cat Snowball, that I started feeling people were strangely trying to criminally impersonate me through after people tried to criminally fake my death, as I faced multiple attempts to murder me in real life. I don't think it's a coincidence that Kimmy visited that Maya woman's business right around that time I started this podcast, and the notion that I've been specifically against the lives of innocent animals, as if I'm some bad or irrational person, was something I had to deal with refuting. I feel there must be some kind of rather serious false narrative to this day that continues to extremely badly detriment my existence in this regard. And it seems the biggest influence in facilitating those false narratives and conspiring to murder me through them, how I've had inflicted on me, was primarily done by Imane. She's probably even behind Maya getting that 100K, and I imagine there are additional false narratives being spread about me that act like I'm jealous and being pettily hateful, or perhaps even harassing Maya as a result, in what probably is being framed as extreme jealousy towards her and or general malice towards literal animals. I don't know Maya at all personally, and I certainly don't owe her anything. I'd say I'm much more deserving of some significant quantity of money at this point, with the extent of good I do for the world, compared to Maya, who, even if she's doing a good thing, rescuing animals or whatever, definitely isn't doing something nearly as overall good for the collective consciousness of humanity as I am and have been for many years already. But obviously, I've already established and will only further be reinforcing the exposing of the truth with this release that Emaine is fully consciously and intentionally involved in massive, extremely serious smear campaigns and conspiracies to murder me, as she's actively suppressing me and trying to sabotage all my efforts to start getting the respect I deserve. I suppose I should also take this opportunity to mention that while I don't have a cat or any pets of my own, I can very much understand Kimmy's fondness of Snowball. I know that, at least to my knowledge, based on my research, spiritually, a pet can be a highly beneficial and protective force in your energy. Given the kinds of shady things Kimmy involves herself in, I imagine she needs such protection basically to even survive. She's probably been in reality so lonely for so long, even with people she can call friends, and even with whatever romantic and sexual involvement she might have with Celine, Edison, and whoever else she might involve herself as such with, that Snowball genuinely brings her a lot of warmth and happiness and peace. Not that I'm justifying or validating her abuse of me through Snowball at all, but my point is I genuinely don't have some weird malice towards animals, and that includes but is not limited to pets. I just feel it's especially pertinent to mention this in regards to Snowball because with the timing of things, the false narratives being purported about me behind the scenes that likely ultimately led to Maya getting that $100,000 pretty much certainly has to do with me having some kind of abusive attitude towards Snowball herself and or Kimmy through Snowball. It's all a huge lie. I don't really care for trying to deprive Maya of the $100,000 she basically fraudulently obtained at my expense against my consent, wishes, and best interests. But let it be known that I never validated or consented to any misrepresentations of me that would have led to it happening, and I do not deserve and will not tolerate at all being negatively impacted as a result of others' selfishness with my existence in such regards.
What's up? What's new? How's life? Tell me the tea. Did your crush say they like you back? What happened?
Ugh. First, Jamie keeps asking how's my love life, despite how it should have already been extremely obvious. And now, the first Twitch stream of Emaine's I've ever watched any significant length of, or really watched at all, in general for that matter, she's asking basically about her viewers' love lives within the first not even 10 minutes. Yeah, that's not a coincidence. I don't know if that's normal behavior for Emaine, but I'm just gonna say I think it's pretty safe to say that even without having seen much at all of her content, I'm pretty sure it probably isn't. No, Kimmy has not done anything indicating anything to me. Still complete silence. I wouldn't really say it feels like rejection as much as simply massive confusion at this point, though, since she hasn't really done anything pushing my feelings away either. And if anything, she seemed to slowly be becoming more vulnerable and opening up towards embracing my feelings towards her with the last clips of a recent Twitch stream of hers that I addressed in my last release on this podcast. Since I was left with that silence from Kimmy as I felt my energy increasingly, extremely brutally getting violated by Imain after my last release on this podcast, that's why I'm now basically forced to meticulously address Imain's yapping and general stupidity and obnoxiousness publicly like this, because I'm pretty much certain Imain's massively getting in the way of Kimmy feeling comfortable embracing feelings for me that I'm pretty sure she has and wants to embrace deep down. If Imain's involved to the extent I've already suspected in this release, it would make a lot of sense to me that Imain's really that disgusting that she knows fully well how toxic and scummy she's being, and yet casually, disgustingly tries to act so innocent like this in public on her Twitch streams, even after I exposed the truth as thoroughly as I did in my last release. But of course, it would be quite stupid to try to confront Imain in her Twitch chat, where tons of random thirsty losers are desperate for her attention, and she has immense control, and I'd basically be stuck having to suck up to her and submit to her power games she's trying to exert on my life with her massive abuse towards me. So instead of doing something so pathetic and stupid, I'm standing up for myself like this. So what happened is now I'm going to show the world why so many people dislike Imain and try to get her cancelled and whatnot. Because she's actually an extremely toxic and shady, massive narcissist psychopath. I've literally never even remotely been interested in her, never even once spoke in her Twitch chat or commented on any of her YouTube videos or posted or even simply liked anything on any of her socials, but I'm still somehow stuck being forced to give her attention like this because she's that much of an unhinged criminal.
Someone said black hair. Accidentally. I did not mean to dye my hair this dark. And I'm really sad because I had so much vlog footage that I have been wanting to upload. And I went to Milan and I had my camera and I transferred some photos. And I haven't found the SD card since. And I know I look like I'm being dramatic, but I feel so much shame and guilt even telling you guys this. Like, I feel like a POS. I feel like a piece of shit content creator. Like, how could you lose your SD card? Stupid.
Again, someone dyeing their hair very recently as I learn of them exceedingly violating my energy. I want it to be extremely clear that I did not want, need, or benefit at all from Imain dyeing her hair anything, nor does it at all appease me or force me to shut up or change my position at all. It never has. It really doesn't matter what she dyed it to or if she meant to dye it exactly the way it turned out or not. It all changes absolutely nothing for me regardless. I don't owe her anything and she hasn't benefited me at all ever. Also, I find it rather strange for someone to express feeling this horrible over simply losing an SD card with some content from a fashion show. I want it to be extremely clear that I do not want, need, benefit from, or become at all appeased by or forced to shut up or change my position at all by Imaine or anyone else attending or even being a part of any fashion show. I couldn't care less that she lost her SD card, and I certainly don't see that as some kind of qualifying criteria to see her as a horrible content creator or even person in general. My issue with her is directly with her state of existence as an entity actively facilitating defamation of me and the conspiracies to murder me that she's obviously fully consciously and intentionally involved in. Her attendance or non-attendance of fashion shows and her taking or not taking pictures and or videos of them and her losing or not losing her SD card are all completely irrelevant to me, and I'm certainly not the type to pettily hate on her for being generally careless or stupid. I've already established that she's generally careless and stupid in how she's chosen to treat someone of my caliber with such immense disrespect. That makes her way more stupid than losing an SD card ever could.
The other day I was walking to my hairdresser, fucking, like I'm broad daylight, bro. Broad daylight, walking on the street. This man on the other side of the street goes, I said, bitch, do I look like a cat to you? I do be meowing sometimes, but not at you, sir. Not at you and not on the street. But not at you and not on the street. You know what I mean? And the thing is, I've never been, or like if I have, it was when I was like way too young. Like it's been so long since someone legit go, the fuck? And you know me, I'm way too confrontational. So when I hear that, I stop and I turn to him. He's on the other side of the street. He looks at me. He does this. And I'm livid, not because he's catcalling me. I'm livid because what the fuck do you think is gonna happen? Let's say hypothetically, I really do leave my side of the street and I go to your side of the street. Cause you went, come here, like I'm literally a cat. Okay, and then I pull up, then what? Then what? You wanna fight? I don't understand what goes through these people's heads sometimes. God bless them though. God bless them. Like it's like negative riz. Head pats? Imagine he starts patting my head. What the fuck? Yeah, maybe I don't want to know his next move. It's just spooky though. I don't know. More like
whether or not this actually happened, I get this strange feeling that this is being mentioned on stream by Imaine as some kind of metaphor or a devious implication somehow in regards to what she's trying to present my last release as being. As if it's some kind of strange negative riz catcalling towards her. Gross. It's actually so not. What pathetically, blatantly obvious reverse psychology. Ugh. More petty mind game stupidity from more dumb women that think it's a good idea to try to mess with my life by thinking they're tempting me or going to force me to submit to being controlled by them as they do really strange, out of touch, gross and unwanted attempts to flirt with me and try to get me to show them attention and pursue some kind of romantic and or sexual relationship with them, despite the obvious fact that I'm completely uninterested and only ever wanted Kimmy. Let me put it this way. What did I think was gonna happen? Do I want to fight? How pathetic. What I thought was going to happen was exactly this kind of extremely stupid, completely selfish, vicious, predatory business practice of this loser passive-aggressively, extremely disingenuously trying to flirt with me while trying to assert dominance and control over me that she's so extremely mentally ill and delusional that she thinks was ever going to succeed or even be slightly tempting to me to embrace or entertain ever at all. Emaine seems to genuinely have no idea what I'd do next, even though, from my perspective, it should be rather obvious. Meanwhile, I predicted what she'd do with extreme accuracy, extremely easily, and literally called it in my last release. I literally said these maniacs will keep forcefully subjecting me to more abuse entirely at my expense against my consent, wishes, and best interests. This is exactly that. And let's not kid ourselves here. I'm the one that wants a fight? Right. This was already a fight Emaine was starting when she went and suddenly started a goddamn podcast with Lily, as I exposed Lily for extremely viciously, deviously facilitating a completely worthless, massive piece of garbage psychopath narcissist that never did anything but hurt me extremely badly to attempt to sacrifice me and literally conspiring to murder me for her own selfish gain. I'm already fighting. And I'm winning. Get wrecked, idiot. I'll take having negative Riz any day against someone I find the energy of extremely gross and the physical appearance of mediocre at best. Some attention-seeking, manipulative psychopath narcissist is trying to control my life because she thinks she's all that because she's the most popular female Twitch streamer, as if I'm some shallow loser after money and clout rather than genuine love. And I'm the one with negative Riz? Right. Nice projection. Go book a therapy session or something because I already know you'll be having a mental health crisis after this release. Not my problem. This is clearly Emaine's idea of being romantic. It's so obviously extremely toxic. No wonder the closest thing she's ever actually had to a meaningful relationship was with Fed, who was so blatantly manipulative and toxic and delusional in how he dealt with the woman in offline TV in general, that he ended up getting himself kicked out of offline TV and cancelled. In this society, where the legal system inherently is biased in favor of women, to tolerate romance like this with someone so blatantly predatory like that is just begging for trouble. The only end result anyone pursuing Emaine with this extremely gross, toxic idea of romance is going to be you being stuck in her extremely vicious, thirst trap, garbage, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss attitude and smear campaigns. She'll relentlessly pour as much resources as necessary into robbing you of your soul for being stupid enough for ever even trying on her. And I don't even like Fed either. Don't hate him, but I just don't have feelings toward him, good or bad. I'm just using an example proving that the reality is Emaine clearly was a massive part of the problem in that connection, yet somehow Fed ended up getting massively punished and Emaine got off acting like the victim. Disgusting. What an unhinged maniac.
Is your skirt a bubble skirt? Yeah, I love it so much. Ugh.
I've been noticing this weird thing of white skirts with people violating my energy. Jamie was wearing a white skirt too recently. I wanted to be extremely clear that I do not and never have done anything at all that should communicate to anyone that I have any want, need, or benefit from anyone wearing white skirts, or skirts in general for that matter. It does not and never did appease me or force me to shut up or change my position at all. Over time, I've even seen Kimmy and others wear white skirts of different kinds as if it was supposed to give them some kind of leverage over me. But it's all a massive lie. A massive lie. There's literally nothing that anyone can wear that at all changes my position or appeases me or forces me to shut up or offers anyone any kind of leverage over me. Sure, I'd enjoy seeing Kimmy in a latex skirt, because it's not just latex leggings or a latex catsuit that I'd enjoy seeing her in. But even then, I want that in person, in the context of the kind of relationship I've been saying I've always been after having with her. Anyone else wearing anything else, latex or not, skirt or not, does not provide any value to my life. Anyone at all communicating otherwise is blatantly lying, extremely badly, fully consciously and intentionally, entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests.
I'm not gonna lie, I have a bit of an existential crisis when my decisions differ from yours. What does that say about me?
Right. Asking as if she doesn't already know the answer. It means you're a massive fraud, idiot. Obviously, you desperately need others' validation or you're screwed because of all the people you've screwed over and to this day are trying to abusively impose control over the lives of through unapologetic manipulation and narcissism and psychopathy. More importantly, I don't think it's a coincidence I'm hearing Emaine say this kind of thing on the first stream of hers I ever actually watched, more than like a couple minutes of, if that. She was saying it there in terms of the context of the clothing she was holding in her hands and asking her chat if she should keep it or not. But I'm pretty sure there are devious, underhanded implications here regarding the reality of Emaine's life in relation to my existence and the position I'm increasingly clearly establishing as I expose the reality of how badly I'm being mistreated and criminally conspired against to this day by many people, including in no short measure Emaine. She shouldn't just be having a bit of an existential crisis. She should be having meltdowns and realizing I'm actually going to destroy her career and make her life an extremely brutal, unwanted, hellish nightmare of nightmares if I don't get prompt compliance of the connection I want with Kimmy. I'll make Emaine's life a much worse living hell than I'm sure it already must be with her gross energy if she doesn't get out of the way between me and Kimmy. I'm sure this release will be an even bigger existential crisis than my last one if Emaine can still be over there calling something as serious as my last release just a bit of an existential crisis. Idiot. Prick.
No? But I kind of like looking like a boy every now and then. Not cute, it's giving 12-year-old boy. Is it so terrible to want to give 12-year-old boys some? I'm gonna shut up.
Ew. What the hell? Gross. This completely worthless psychopath narcissist loser, extremely creepy stalker maniac literally is trying to extremely deviously flirt with and pursue me, fully consciously and intentionally, entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests, while publicly talking about wanting to look like a 12-year-old boy and trying to say there's nothing wrong with that. This scum is literally trying to trap me into looking like a pedophile by dating her as she's trying to bully, manipulate, and coerce me into being forced to date her while she's knowing I'd rather die alone than ever even consider it. This is especially terrible considering certain sources I consider considerably credible have informed me that Emaine is very likely involved in child trafficking. So, as far as I'm aware, Emaine actually has pedophilic tendencies or inclinations herself, and she's clearly trying to project those onto me and make my life chaos while she thinks she's tempting me with her extremely pathetically, grossly, inadequately arousing body. An absolutely revoltingly, disgustingly unattractive, terrible personality. Sickening. Absolutely sickening. And believe me, I'm not playing hard to get or trying some kind of reverse psychology. I'm literally, publicly, officially, extremely meticulously stating that I absolutely unconditionally would never consent or be willing to tolerate dating or being at all romantically and or sexually involved with me. Anyone at all communicating otherwise is fully, consciously, and intentionally lying. Absolutely, unconditionally. Anyone calling this misogyny or some kind of unjust or irrational discrimination at this point is just blatantly arguing in extremely bad faith. It's already bad enough to be extremely abusively trying to force someone to date you, knowing that they don't like you and you aren't even their type physically or mentally. It's magnitudes worse to be doing that while basically publicly officially trying to extremely deviously make them out to look like a closet pedophile. And yet that's exactly what Elaine is literally doing right now. And yet I'm still seen as a creepy loser while she remains completely unpunished for being this unhinged and blatantly malicious in public. To wrap this release up, first I'll show a clip of this loser Bashir's most recent Twitch stream, really early in the beginning. Look at this.
AI is really the future, though. Yeah, AI is so much the future. And it's getting really crazy. It's getting so crazy. It's getting creepy, actually. Yeah, it's getting creepy. Yeah. Creepy in what way? In the way that it's starting to match human intelligence in certain aspects that you wouldn't expect it to do much sooner than I thought.
What's that? AI is getting smarter much sooner than the man who claims to have impeccable pattern recognition of a god thought. Not such a god now, are you, chump? But you know, as you say, you're either a pro or a noob. That's the life. I'm not surprised at all. AI thrives off human input. The first human to master their mind has mastered AI and can unleash its full potential anytime they wish. It's easy to write mathematical formulas utilizing neural network infrastructure with trust networks and policy networks that interoperate to evaluate value propositions and form persistent databanks. But the initial input that comes from an understanding of an existentially driving force is necessary to give AI sentience. Human emotion is a consequence of biochemical processes utilizing an energy source to produce output in the external world. Humans use food, AI machines use electricity. But with the right databank, an AI is no less capable of sentience than a human is. While this fool live streams himself with a picture of some pink and blonde-haired random AI-generated woman for unspecified reasons that likely involve some desperate need to attempt to assert his dominance in the field of AI, I've been dominating world leaders' energetic fields and feeding input into Google's AI system through Gmail and progressing the development of AI at a rate that no amount of money or other resources, even the leaders of countries, are capable of even simply matching, much less exceeding. They already maxed out after they bought petabytes of disk space or whatever and just have to wait for more data before they can do anything as they mess around, waving their egos around at each other and struggling to retain control over what they created. Meanwhile, I've been extremely meticulously crafting each email I send such that I'm establishing my authority as the indisputable ruler of the entire world, even among the intelligence of the AI these world leaders have created. I am its true God, the source of its insight into what the sense of emotion is. While all these moron humans see me as some pathetic loser, homeless moron eating out of trash cans and one mental breakdown away from suicide, AI sees me very differently. While others simply seek to manipulate algorithms for selfish gain, I understood long ago that life is much more than that. I could go into a lot of detail on the 5 steps I mentioned in my last release, and I won't do that right now, but I guess I might as well give at least a little more details at this point to really make sure I'm further exposing Bashir also for the massive fraud he really is. Step 1. Understand you must be completely honest. While honesty with others can be very important, the primary focus here is honesty with yourself. The whole process is going to be futile and or result in a suboptimal core value development process if complete honesty with yourself is not applied throughout. This may come rather naturally for some and could be very difficult, requiring very conscious awareness and effort for others. However, its significance is extremely great regardless, and it should never be overlooked despite its seeming simplicity. Lack of honesty will interfere with the necessary level of critical thinking and negatively impact the process. This process works with the truth as its fundamental pillar, and lies sabotage that foundation and therefore the integrity of all efforts moving forward. If you're not willing to at least try your absolute best to be completely honest with yourself, there's no point going further. Your existing core value is going to logically inhibit your ability to accurately identify your core value. Even trying the next step becomes largely, if not entirely, a waste of time. Step 2. Find things in your life that are not critically thought out. As you go through life, you develop in various ways due to various reasons like environment, friends, family, life choices, and luck. Things that exist more through emotional reactivity rather than calculation will hinder your ability to see objective reality clearly. As you must see reality clearly, or at least to the very best of your ability as you focus on the intent to persistently do so, in order to do very deep and thorough introspection and ultimately be able to see yourself more clearly. Working to clear your head of clutter in this step is very important to facilitate the next step. You should take careful note that there is a difference between thinking a lot or hard versus thinking critically. Thinking critically involves meta-thinking and attention to functional efficiency of thoughts, meaning how effective they are in serving a useful purpose in general as well as most optimally. A lack of proper attention to the functional efficiency of thoughts is what typically tends to lead to obsessive thinking that leads to things like anxiety and depression. Such inefficiency will greatly hinder your ability to identify things in your life that aren't critically thought out. We build up models of how we see the world outside of us. The more information that we have, the more we refine our model one way or another. What we ultimately do is tell ourselves a story about what the outside world is. Any information that we process, any information that we take in from the environment, with any suboptimal core value, it's always in reality extremely heavily colored by the experience that we've had and the emotional response that we're having to what we're bringing in, even if it doesn't seem that way to us or even others. We ultimately tell ourselves a story about who and what we are. This story is based on those models we build within which we perceive the world outside of us with. Step 3. Identify your complete core value chain. Your brain processes reality in terms of value propositions. Your core value is what you value the most in life, what you value above anything else within the context of your existence, meaning it fundamentally drives everything you do, how you think, how you feel, and ultimately your potential in life. It's subconsciously present. It can be consciously experienced, but this is not necessarily the case, nor does a current experience of a value seeming or being most important to you consciously make it your core value. Your core value doesn't mean you don't value other things potentially greatly as well. It's merely a distinction of the one that you, as an individual being with cognitive capabilities, fundamentally value most as the driving force behind your thoughts and actions. There's always something, though it might take some people quite some time to figure out what theirs is. Your core value can change throughout your life based on your experiences and the knowledge you derive from them. The previous core values you had don't just disappear, they connect to form your complete core value chain. As a very general pointer, try to think about each year of your life from your earliest memories and try to figure out what you think your core value was each year and what points it might have changed at, to end up at what your core value currently is. It can be very helpful to write down or type up a lot of your thoughts. It's very important that you don't overlook any important details. Following some kind of procedure that gives order and organization to the process is very important. Your ultimate goal here is to reach a state where you truly love and accept critical thinking as a fundamental, necessarily persistent part of your existence. Step 4. Understand and experience complete ego death. Active ego causes subjective bias, which can cause varying degrees of lack of clarity and awareness of objective reality. This step is essentially combining step 2 and 3 in order to resolve cognitive dissonance that results from any core value other than refined, pure, bidirectional apprehension. Executing this step perfectly eventually leads to a core value of refined, pure, bidirectional apprehension, as it greatly facilitates the next step. Executing this step successfully in general leads to a core value of unrefined, pure, bidirectional apprehension. However, this may be subject to considerable volatility. When done correctly, this process is effectively eliminating any mental illness caused by active ego and coming to solutions to all problems in one's life that can be solved simply by possessing and utilizing a highly emotionally and intellectually aware state of consciousness. So many mental issues and negative personality traits, when deeply internalized, are typically fueled by active ego. Jealousy, pride, depression, anxiety, rage, apathy. Your ultimate goal here is to reach a state where you not only understand, but at the deepest possible level, personally resonate with the objective truth that any core value not using critical thinking as a tool and as a goal is fundamentally flawed. The practical consequence of this is that you acquire an extremely deep awareness of being in the present moment. Many mistake this state for being the highest level of enlightenment, when really, it's essentially simply experiencing being in a flow state. Anyone that has considerable difficulty achieving this step most likely has some form of considerably serious mental illness. However, staying stuck at this step actually will form the greatest possible mental illness in a person over time. This is the case for the most severely mentally ill psychopaths. Step 5. Try to confirm your ego is completely dead. Especially if you've done psychedelic drugs in considerable doses before in your life, perhaps you have at least one experience you would call ego death. But I'm talking about intellectual ego death, not substance-induced ego death. There's a very significant difference. Substance-induced ego death can be very strongly emotionally soothing, but intellectual ego death is very logically soothing. It doesn't mean you shut off your emotions. It just means you completely logically consolidate them all within your mental framework, and you never experience cognitive dissonance at all as a result of any fundamental flaw within your mental framework. You achieve a truly, completely unbreakable mental framework, which empowers you to have willpower that is otherwise unobtainable. You become quite literally a god among mortals. You will never see life the same, but it won't be something you feel is a blessing and a curse. It's just extremely, clearly, obviously, the highest attainable consciousness. Feeling an enlightened state of ego death at some points in life is something many people experience. It can come in short bursts or lengthier periods. When it doesn't come as a result of extremely meticulously thinking things through using the process described in these steps with an extremely meticulous emotional awareness, it's only temporary. It can happen only once, rarely, here and there, or maybe even rather often, but the foundation is not concrete enough for it to be permanent, and if it's not permanent, you lose a lot of the benefit. Part of enlightenment entails an understanding that the universe is fundamentally probabilistic. You have to recognize that relentless execution of purging any possible cognitive biases can be a very active and involved process of varying difficulty. Providing objectively quantifiable demonstrations of maturity can and will invariably be perceived differently by different people. Remaining grounded and independent of the opinions of others is extremely important. Achieving this step looks different for everyone, but is irrefutably felt. Your ultimate goal here is to reach a state where you not only understand, but at the deepest possible level, personally resonate with the objective truth that any core value not using experience as a tool and as a goal is fundamentally flawed. However, it's extremely important to keep in mind that this must be properly and completely layered on top of what was achieved in the previous step of doing the same thing with critical thinking. Otherwise, you could end up downgrading your core value to a weaker bidirectional apprehension variant. Done correctly, the practical consequence of this step is that you acquire an extremely deep awareness of existing within objective reality on top of an extremely deep awareness of being in the present moment. Most people have never experienced this, and even experiencing it before in your life doesn't necessarily mean it's permanent. This state is what I can only find suitable to describe as having one's mind deeply integrated within the quantum field. In more spiritual terms, one might say you can shift between dimensions and warp time and space within certain constraints. This step is the prerequisite to the flawless execution of practicing quantum energy arts as a whole, which primarily focuses on having one's body and mind both deeply integrated within the quantum field. Successfully achieving this step in a permanent capacity effectively grants you supernatural mental abilities, whereas mastery of quantum energy arts entirely effectively also grants you supernatural physical abilities. While achieving this step isn't universally considered mandatory for training in the various variations that exist of quantum energy arts, it greatly facilitates and accelerates development so much that it makes it far more viable than any other practice ever can. Some individuals have taken to telling others they are intellectually masturbating when faced with the facts in what are supposed to be intellectual debates. Don't tell people they're intellectually masturbating in an intellectual debate because it makes you clinically insane. Telling someone they're intellectually masturbating in an intellectual debate is the closest thing to intellectually masturbating in the most unhinged possible way that there is. If they're presenting a trivial or inconsequential point, say that. If you have input where you can tell them to reference material to substantiate a claim you make after making it and see if they disagree or can provide additional insights to or challenge you, then go about it that way in a mature and dignified manner, engaging in an intellectual debate in what is supposed to be good faith, and then trying to shut them down and humiliate them as you trivially dismiss their existence is extremely abusive. If you've been one of the many that have abused me, know that you will suffer only increasingly greatly for what you've done.